fasten your seatbelt. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butts.
Go get him, kid.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
F. What you're going to ask me. So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me. And my natural response could be to get offended.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Back once again. Our movie this time around is Regarding Henry. I feel like, I don't know, something about this, I know it has nothing to do with being British, but something about the title makes me want to say it in a British accent. Like, Regarding Henry. I don't know. Just for some reason.
It would work,
I don't know what language that was, Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say last week with the Addams Family.
You mean next week?
Next week with the Addams Family, I forgot to mention Dr. Penderschloss kind of has the same accent as Frank.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is Addams Family canonical Father of the Bride?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think Frank is, Penderschloss might be a married name. Yeah. But I think she might be related to Frank. I agree. Very, very, very similar. Because I was trying to pinpoint that. This is a very similar accent. Where have I heard this before?
Father of the Bride.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bonks. So this time around, our movie is Regarding Henry. And I'm regarding right now Dennis Matuch and Pat Canigallo. How are you guys doing tonight?
Yo, good.
Great.
Great to be here again.
Dennis even rocking the Regarding Henry virtual background.
Yeah.
I mean, how many other people in the world are on Zoom right now using a Regarding Henry virtual background?
Well, there's a reason. There's a reason for that. And this is the value of this show. I learned something new that I didn't know as we watched this film. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. And if you know what I'm talking about, I just got to move a little here.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I am blown away by that.
Yeah.
I was blown away by that. I'm over it now, but I'm not surprised. But now at the time I was like, I had to do some math and numbers and birthdays and
yeah. Does Pat know what it is?
Don't know. There's a picture of somebody who's delivering something to Henry in this and responsible for writing this film.
I must have missed 60 minutes. Wait, what are you saying?
The person there you're seeing there.
Yeah.
Delivered.
The kid that was the food delivery kid?
The delivery kid also wrote the film.
Oh.
And his name is Jeffrey. You might know him as JJ.
JJ Abrams.
JJ Abrams.
Really?
25 years old. 25, 26, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean.
Jeez.
Dang. I'm not more jealous of him now. I mean, could I be? I don't know.
Well, like they said in The Big Lebowski, that creep can roll, man. That's impressive.
Get that man a cracker.
Because for a 25 or 26-year-old to write that film, it's you got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck writing Goodwill, but still, I think it's a very interesting, I don't know.
And
I saw the name and then I looked it up and I'm like, is he related to him? Is it his dad? I know his dad wasn't that. He wasn't a writer, I didn't think. I know he did some stuff, and then when I looked up and it was like Jeffrey is really JJ, I'm like, whoa. He was only like 20.
And where does that come from? And where does that come from? Like, I wonder where he got that. Like, did he just have it floating around in his head? Is there some personal experience? Did he read something?
He seems to, I've done some, and I know like on his TED Talk and some stuff I've read about him because I've been a fan of him for a while in terms of like, I appreciate what he does in his work and stuff. And I think it's hit or miss. It's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan. I just pull for those guys. Some people are quick to like want to crucify them and say that they screwed this up or that this wasn't good. But I'm like, they're out there making stuff and we're sitting on our butt watching stuff. And I'm like, they're out there and they're going to give a good effort and they believe in what they're doing. And I think they go out and they try to make good stuff and stuff that they think would be fun as a kid. Where does he get that? I know Ordinary People was one of his favorite scripts of all time.
Okay.
And he's one of the guys who also notices the story of the kind of divorced family in E.T. He notices the relationship between Brody and his kid in those scenes. And he appreciates, whenever you hear him talk about that, why he's also known for big special effects, he always tries to add, whether it's Super 8, some sort of human element to the stories about relationships and things like that. So from that perspective, I'm not really shocked. He must have just been a kid who loved movies. And I think that when you get touched by those type of stories and scripts, and if you're going to mention Ordinary People, which there's no spaceships in there's nothing fun. It's about relationships. And I'm like, if that, what he holds up as one of his best screenplays he's ever read, you're going to see that work somewhere pour out into his voice, into his words on paper, I think. And I think that's true of anybody. It's like M. Night Shyamalan, it has that twist ending, and there's a certain kind of tribute to even Twilight Zone to a certain degree in that respect. But they try to hit some sort of element into their thing that's thoughtful. And sometimes it's a home run, sometimes it's, a double, or sometimes it's just a little bunt or a strikeout. But, you appreciate him coming up to the bat and swinging. Mm-hmm. So nice. I just thought that was a great thing from this movie, and one of the reasons I was like, definitely want to be in here on this one, because it's a cool thing to find out that he did that. I said I was blown away when I found it out.
Wow. Had you heard the story?
Like honestly, John, if I said who wrote regarding Henry, how many guesses would it have taken for you to get to J.J. Abrams?
It would have taken a while.
I don't think I ever would have got there. No. Like, honestly, because of the age.
Right.
Now, if that movie was made 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I get to him in the top 5 or top 10, maybe. Mm-hmm. But when you throw the age in there, it's the ages which it's dumbfounded. It's right. Like you're a 20, and the fact that he was 26 when this movie came out, which means he wrote it he didn't write it in 2 weeks as he turned 25 or 26. He probably was writing this thing at 23, 24. Maybe he had the idea. I don't know. And was it his original screenplay idea, or was it somebody who said, "Hey, here, write this movie for us"? And who's going to trust this 20-some-year-old kid to write that screenplay? I just think it's a cool story. So anyway,
did you hear the story of how he got his first job in Hollywood?
With Spielberg, with the films?
Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool when I read that.
You got to get the Super 8. I used to show it in my digital communications class at Hawthorne, and I used to show the Super 8 because it was all about this infectious life. When I was trying to get kids to just love movies and love making movies, and what he has a feature on the Super 8 DVD where it goes through everything. And his friends and kids, they were asked by Spielberg to go through all his old films and digitize, edit them and digitize them. He had all this stuff or whatever. So that's what they did. Yeah.
Well, because they found him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That he and Matt Reeves. Isn't Matt Reeves?
Yeah.
Didn't he do, oh God, I'm going to blank out on it. Why am I blanking out on the movie that I know Matt Reeves for?
The one that he directed or what?
Yeah, Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah,
and he's doing the new Batman, and
doing the new Batman. He's done the Planet of the Apes.
Yep. Yeah, he and Matt Reeves were buddies. They were 15 years old, and they actually found the Super 8 movies in the house that J.J. Abrams' family had moved into, because it used to be a house that Steven Spielberg lived in. Yeah, and they found those tapes, and they returned it to him, and Spielberg was like, "Hey, I'll give you guys a job cataloging these and, organizing this for me and whatnot." And they were like 15 at the time.
Yeah. They're really young kids, and he entrusted them with their movies. And later on when he met him, he's like, "Hey, we did them." He's like, "Yeah, I know. I remember. You're the guys who did it." Yeah. But and seeing the thing that throws me off too is I know from that featurette and everything else they talked about all that. I knew that. So like, where in this featurette did it not come up that he did regarding Henry? Because I knew him and Matt Reeves worked on Felicity together, the TV show, and that's like late 90s, early 2000s, I think, for Felicity. And I knew Cloverfield was like his first big one, so I totally was blown away that the fact that this actually like was him related then. It had anything to do with this movie. So, because the 98, 91, that's 7-8 years, Felicity. And that seemed like he was like a young guy just putting that together. So this would have been like, dude, you're almost a teenager, it feels like, when you're making regarding Henry then.
Right.
So, but yeah, and then there's like a really good, I can't think of the guy's name, Steven something. There's a guy who's a cinematographer who's really good too. And they were all three were like these buddies just making films. And so it's a cool thing. So if you ever get a chance to watch Super 8, just get the DVD and watch the featurette on it. It's a cool 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've seen Super 8. I don't know that I've seen the extras on the DVD though.
The extras on it. There's one where it's I forget what it's called. They had a name for it, but yeah, just the way all that stuff pours into like his work and how he approaches things, and he does. I think there's the clip from Jaws in there too. Yeah. Yeah, I think they might have shown, or maybe that was the TED Talk, but either way, check out the TED Talk or check out the featurette on there. And when Pat, you were asking, like, where does this come from? I mean, obviously there's a talent, there's a love for it, and the kid just grew up loving movies and making it. And he was kind of like, he said he wasn't good at sports, he wasn't good at other stuff, and it was more about like, he just wanted to make films. He loved films and he wanted to make good films, and he tried to make films when they were younger, and he said a lot more probably crap, but he just was making films, and then he got better and better and better, and that's and a big thing for him, and he credits in his TED Talk is, I think it's his grandfather bought him the camera. And that was one of the things that, like, I always say we didn't have the money, growing up, and I'm like, we tried tape recorder, and I'm sure, John, you did this stuff, we did puppet shows. It's like, man, that's why one of the harder things for me to teach that class that I taught was when kids love doing stuff, that was super awesome. But for me, there was a personal kind of, I don't know if the word's jealousy, but like this idea that you guys have a computer that you can edit a movie on yourself, and a camera and phones that you could record. Like, you have all the tools are just in your hands, but you don't want to use them. And that just drove me nuts, because I'm like, my God, what would have happened if I would have had those tools in my hand, or my brothers would have had those tools in their hand, 30, 40 years ago. It's like,
we were tonight we were watching a video that the local high school has put out for incoming freshmen, because my son's going to be a freshman this next fall, and it was kind of like an introduction to the high school and like what kind of classes are available, what kind of clubs are available, things like that. And they start going through it, and they get to the point where they get to like the audio visual, the AV clubs and the AV classes, and the student who's talking through it is like, I've been in the film production classes for 7 semesters now here, almost every year that I've been here at the high school, and I've learned how to do this. And then a group of us traveled to Los Angeles and actually went to Hollywood, and we're on the movie set for this, and we were helping produce a video for this, and I'm just sitting there going, and he's over there, I'm like, is any of this sinking in? Is any of this interesting you? Whatever. And I'm sitting there going, whatever. If I had been given the chance, like if I had the opportunity to go like to have a class like this that I could have done, and then traveled to Hollywood and done that kind of stuff, because that's what I usually, that's what I usually say is, I'm like, yes, I ended up going into journalism, and then I ended up going into education, but there was a part of me that in the back of my mind was like, do we try for USC and go to film school or something like that? And just didn't end up going that route, but like there's parts of me that was like,
the route back then was one that was very hard to support from, when I say hard to support from like parent, they were trying to be practical and realistic, and, and then for you, like, or at least for me, when I say for you, it was like, I was into sports. I played sports. I wanted to be a baseball player. That was my dream job. But man, if you would have given me that stuff back then, like that would have been a backup plan, and that would have been like, I could learn this stuff, and like there was always that love for it. It was just, I didn't have the opportunity or the access to things.
Right.
So if you're given the access and God forbid a class or semesters of classes like that, you go, man, well, what could have been? Right. Now the good side is, you're not dead and we're not dead. No one's dead right now. So there's no excuse now other than time and family and things like that take away those type of, opportunities. Yeah. So when you see a kid who doesn't, it's that whole thing, man. You just want to just wake them up and say, you have so much available to you that don't take this for granted. But, we got to make a movie. Like if some teacher assigned me a chance to do a homework project for a movie, I would have been like, oh my God, this is the most awesome thing in the world. I would be up doing that thing. Like, oh God, we got to do a movie project. And again, not all kids are like that. There's some really awesome kids. I can just point to some kids who made fantastic videos going on. And we got Sebastian. A bunch of people are out there doing stuff right now, which is super cool and super thrilling to know that maybe that little light was maybe, at least nurtured a little bit during those classes and throughout high school when they pursued that stuff later on. So that's a cool thing to know. But it does bother you when you see the kids are just like, oh God, I gotta do a video. I'm like,
let me make sure this is working here. Wait, you have to do a video. Wait, you have to do a video? What do you mean?
A 20-page research paper then if that's what you want. Is that what you want?
You get to do a video. Yeah. You have the opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, that always kind of drove me nuts because, you knew back when I was teaching my class, there were plenty of times I was like, hey guys, I'm going to give you the option. We could make a movie instead of doing this other stuff. And then I'd have the kids be like, can I just please write the 6-page essay as opposed to the, I'm like, yes, that is one of the options, but okay, so how many of you would like to opt for the 6-page essay as opposed to making a short film? Yeah. Oh, 95% of you? Great. I really look forward to reading your 6-page essays. And I remember one time I think I even said that to the kids. I was like, guys, I've given you an option to respond to this in a very creative way. I said, I'm just telling you, if 95% of you are truly going to choose the 6-page essay option that I've provided for you in here, those essays better be the best things I've ever read in my entire life.
I'm going to be in a real piss ass mood when I'm reading them. But man, you turn into video, dude, I'm going to be pretty stoked and excited no matter how bad it is.
Turn in a video and you're in, you're good.
Well, you just like to see kids be creative, you know, and I think that's it. Because if you've got creativity in you and you want to kind of exercise that, get that out, it's like when other people have that chance. So I mean, like I said, I'm partially jealous of J.J. Abrams. I mean, he credits his grandfather and giving him that, that camera when that was something that was rare and expensive. And, you had to wait like a week, and they make fun of that in the Super 8 when they're like, I can get a rush on this and get you back in 4 days to get your developed footage. And it's like, that's a rush, 4 days, where I'm like, I used to stop it at that point and go, guys, did you hear that? So he filmed something. He doesn't know what it looks like for 4 days. And that's a rush. It would normally take a week. And I'm like, you can film something right now and you can put it in the memory card in that computer and edit it right away and edit it and have it up on YouTube in like 20 minutes if you want it, or not within an hour. And I'm like, does that sink into you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh? What?
What's YouTube? All right, so our movie this time around is Regarding Henry. It came out on the 10th of July, 1991, rated PG-13 with a runtime of 1 hour, 48 minutes, directed by Mike Nichols, who passed away in 2014. Also directed The Graduate and Working Girl. Producers on this one were Mike Nichols and Scott Rudin. Nichols did The Birdcage, Primary Colors. Rudin did the Truman Show and No Country for Old Men. Writer on this one was Jeffrey Abrams, also known as J.J. Abrams, as we've been talking about, who also wrote Forever Young, the Alias TV series, and Super 8. Cinematography was done by Giuseppe Rotuno, who also did The Adventures of Baron Munchausen and Amarcord. Music was done by Hans Zimmer, who also did Gladiator, Dunkirk, and Inception. Budget for this one was $25 million, box office $43 million. Flickmetrics gives it a 61%. CinemaScore gives it an A-. Harrison Ford plays Henry Turner. He was in The Fugitive, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Witness. Annette Bening played Sarah Turner. She was in American Beauty, The Grifters, and The Great Outdoors. Rebecca Miller played Linda. She was in Consenting Adults and The Pickle. Bruce Altman played Bruce, Henry's partner. He was in Matchstick Men and Running Scared. Elizabeth Wilson, who died in 2015, played Jessica, Henry's secretary. She was in The Graduate and 9 to 5. Donald Moffat, who died in 2018, played Charlie Cameron, Henry's boss. He was in The Thing and Clear and Present Danger. Camion Allen played Rachel Turner, Henry's daughter. He, regarding Henry, I believe was her only credit. Robin Bartlett played Phyllis, was in Mad About You and Moonstruck. Bill Nunn, who died in 2016, played Bradley. He was in Mo Better Blues, Runaway Jury, and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. An unscrupulous corporate lawyer, Henry Turner will do whatever it takes to win a case and treats his family with the same degree of ruthlessness. After Henry gets caught in the middle of a robbery and is shot in the head, he wakes from a coma to find that he has amnesia. Can't even remember how to do the simplest of tasks. As he recovers and relearns how to function, Henry reveals a much kinder and more thoughtful personality, much to the surprise of his family and friends.
Cancel my lunch tomorrow. I'm going to work through and move the dinner to next week. And call my wife and tell her I can't make dinner at 7:30.
We find for the defendant on all counts.
Yes.
Success made Henry Turner's life perfect.
Give me a break, will you? I just want a pack of cigarettes.
Fate
Henry, I know you can hear me.
made it something more.
Cardiac arrest caused lack of oxygen to the brain. It's going to be a long, tough rehabilitation.
I'll be your physical therapist for the remainder of the evening. All right.
In some ways, he's starting from scratch here.
You're stepping like a natural man. Go ahead.
Little loop, cross over.
How did you learn to do that?
You taught me.
Such a shame. I mean, he was so good.
You've got a life back at home with friends and family and everything you could ever want.
They love you. They're gonna take care of you. Well, I don't want them to take care of me, Bradley.
No, I don't like eggs.
What? Eggs are your favorite.
Okay, give me a lot of eggs.
Where were you?
I bought a dog.
Mom, look. Since you've come home, we haven't made love. If you're nervous or something.
Well, yeah, I'm a little nervous. Okay, well, we're really nervous.
You did it!
Are you my mother?
I can read.
It's not Henry I feel sorry for, it's Sarah.
This is Ajax.
It's like she's got 2 kids now.
Stop it.
I heard he's back at work.
Yeah, but doing what?
In this case,
East Shore Hospital, your famous last case.
what we did was wrong.
What we did is paying for our lunch.
I thought I could go back to my life, but I don't like who I was, Bradley.
You didn't like showing affection in public. It bothered you.
I don't mind so much anymore.
One minute you're an attorney, the next you're an imbecile.
That's not a very long trip.
You can't let them hurt you, those people. They don't know you anymore.
I don't remember what I was like.
Sarah, don't listen to nobody trying to tell you who you are.
We were in love once, years ago, and then we weren't, not for a long time. But we're better now. Please don't walk away. Not now.
Harrison Ford. A Mike Nichols film. Regarding Henry.
All right. So I'm going to start with our typical question, but I'm going to kind of make this a 2-parter. How does this movie make you feel? And is this the first time you've seen this movie?
Not the first time I've seen this movie. I've seen it once before, I think, because when I watched it for this, I was like, it was kind of like, I've seen this. I know I've seen this. And then as I watched it, I'm like, oh, I've seen this. But it's been once, I would say. And how does the movie make me feel? Maybe it's an all the feels movie, you know, angry, sad, and then happy, and then what is it? What is the feel for when you're tasked with something? When you're given a task, you know what I'm saying? Like what's that? Not empowered, but
Con. He tasks me.
He tasks me, Joachim. Yeah, or Joachim, or whatever that guy's name was.
Joaquin.
Is that what he said? His accent just threw me off, man.
I don't remember.
Okay, whatever. Okay. Where is the override? Whatever. But the last piece, I would say it leaves me with challenged or tasked. I can't think of another word other than that. It's just, so I'm going to stick with it.
Not the first time I've seen it. I saw it back then, but I did not see it in the theater. I saw it on VHS, or it must have been VHS at the time. And feelings, I mean, it's just one of those, I would say nice. When you say feelings, I guess I feel nice. It sounds like a generic term, but it's just a nice movie, and it has some self-reflective qualities to it. So you kind of look inward, and it makes you think about life and things, and who you are, and how sometimes people need a kick in the pants to wake them up to things. And in this case, it reminds me a little bit of, maybe we're jumping ahead, but it reminds me a little bit of the feelings I was saying. There's sort of similar tones of when I watched My Life with Michael Keaton, the one where he has the video and he's dying of, cancer and his kid's on the way. And it's just that kind of, there's a transformation that happens in the person's lives, and tragedy helps do that. And I think that is true of all lives. So it makes you think about your own situations and different situations throughout your life. So introspective, nice, good feeling, good movie. I liked it. So,
yeah. For me, this was the first time I had seen it. I'd never seen this one before. I knew I'd heard of it, but it obviously wasn't on, it wasn't on a list of movies where I'm sitting there going, hey, I've really got to look into like some of the deeper Harrison Ford cuts here. So, definitely not one that I probably would have sought out if it weren't for, having it on this show. In terms of how I feel, I usually try not to look at any kind of reviews or numbers or anything like that before watching the movie. This time I happened to, and saw that it got some lower reviews on like Rotten Tomatoes, some of those other places. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, I haven't heard of it, and maybe there's a reason I haven't heard of it, so maybe it's not all that great. Ended up watching the movie and really enjoyed it. My wife and I both, we watched it together, really enjoyed the movie. And in terms of how the movie makes me feel, I'm going to say it this way, but I don't want it to necessarily come out sounding like I'm going to be bashing on the movie, is it felt, while it did have some of those qualities that you guys are talking about, it had the, it was something that could prompt some self-reflection and things like that. And it definitely had kind of that message of getting the chance to, redo some things in your life if you had the opportunity to, a little bit of like a It's a Wonderful Life kind of deal, or what was that Nicolas Cage one, The Family Man, movies that are kind of like that, where you get a chance to see what life would be like if you lived it differently, or if you had that opportunity. Had a little bit of a Rain Man vibe to it in certain ways, but there were certain things to me, and maybe, and we can talk about that more here in just a second, maybe it's because of J.J. Abrams' youth. The storytelling to me didn't seem very full. It didn't seem very in-depth. Like, there were several things that I'm watching the movie and I'm going, well, that seemed like it was going to be a major problem, and then suddenly it got glossed over. Or, I kind of expected them to go a little bit further with this, and suddenly that just like magically cleared itself up, and it's not a problem now. So I don't know. There were certain things that it was, in this movie, I could tell that we're going for some of the feel good vibes with this movie, but there were certain places that I was like, we could have still gotten to those feel good vibes, but I kind of wanted to see them deal with a few of these really kind of problematic things on the way to getting to those feel-good vibes. And maybe I would have felt a little bit more like it's I see this as being
one example of what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, I think that this movie had the opportunity to be something that could be, on the level of like an Oscar contender or an award winner for writing and for the film itself, because everything else about it is great. But it seemed like they got to some of these things a little too quickly. Like some of the stuff, the financial trouble that they were going to be in, like that seemed to get handled a little too quickly. Like I would have thought that seemed like such a big thing. And I think that you could have, without adding an extra, half hour, 40 minutes onto the movie, I think there are some things that you could have done storytelling wise to, keep that plot point in there. Because I remember when we first start finding out, when people are asking, his wife, are you guys going to be okay, money wise, or how are things going to work with him not being able to do his job, and he's in a coma, or he can't even walk, he can't even talk, and she has to lie about it, and there was so much tension around that early on in the movie, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's not a problem. We sold our house, we moved to a smaller house, we're all good now. Like, based on, and somebody even made the comment, like, based on the lifestyle that you're used to having, I'm not sure that things are going to be that fine that quickly.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. So it was a couple of little things like that, like a couple little things of, just, it seemed like some of the problems that I think could have been dealt with a little bit more in depth. And I think it just glossed over some of those things. And I think it could have been a much deeper, much more meaningful movie. Not that it wasn't enjoyable, and not that it didn't have its good and positive qualities, but it was a movie that when I came out on the other side of it, I was like, that's nice. Could have been better, but that's nice. And the fact that, and I didn't look up to see how old J.J. Abrams was when he wrote it, but I'm like, as a 25-year-old, I'm like, okay, well, there's good on you for being a 25-year-old that, has a Hollywood screenplay produced. That's amazing. But at the same time, I'm also wondering, as a 25-year-old, do you truly have enough of that life experience to really bring that depth into a movie like this? I mean, this movie requires some depth, and I'm not sure a 25-year-old, not that he's not skilled, but I'm not sure that a 25-year-old has that life experience to be able to draw on.
Well, it almost points to a little bit of the lacking of what you're talking about, is like a younger person often will think that there's quicker, simpler, easier ways to solve problems, and they can just kind of work their way out very quickly. So it almost seems like that kind of pours through maybe a little bit of the story. And I agree. And it's interesting you did use the word that I used to describe how I felt when I watched it, which was nice. It was like, well, it's nice. Use the word nice. And that's really what I say, is it's just nice. And is it a perfect script? Is it perfect? No, it's good acting. It's got Harrison Ford and it's got Annette Bening, both great characters. I like the therapist Bradley. I think he does a good job as well. I'm like, it's a nice story. But I do agree. Like, why isn't that, like, what makes it not Oscar worthy? Because stories like that could become Oscar worthy. And I think it's just, like you said, it lacks a little bit more. The word's depth.
Could it have been, could it have been helped with, I mean, it was an hour and 40 minutes.
I thought about that too. If it's longer, does it become better, or is it, I couldn't tell if it was an issue with it being longer, or if it's,
because and I'm going to tell you, like, I mean, we're getting into the time period of movies here when I was really like starting to be old enough to go out to movies on my own and process how long they were and everything. And I want to say this is when movies were in kind of a shorter phase, hour and a half, like, because, and then it was like later 90s. It started, well, you had those epics, right? That were like the 3-hour ones. And then that was like, oh my gosh, you're in there for a long time. But then the movies kind of settled around 2. So now when you go see a movie, it's kind of 2 hours is the mark. And I mean, do you think an hour and 50-minute movie, or just coming in at 2 hours, do you think that could have added more story? And I mean, obviously, if done well, more story, more better. Do you think, or that it was just, you wish they would have covered a little bit more, John?
Yeah, I wish they would have taken some of those things that, given their lifestyle, given his profession, given his drive to be the best attorney he can be, and again, clearly he enjoys having that money, and he enjoys the kind of power that comes with that money. The whole thing about the table at the beginning, it looks like a turtle, and he's upset about it, and it's I think just some of the issues of the money and the power and things like that, it just really kind of got thrown out the door to serve a story that was more of kind of a heartwarming, don't want to say coming of age, but it actually is kind of coming of age because he has to start from scratch, and relearn everything again. But there were some issues that the movie started with, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm curious to see how they deal with this, and they didn't deal with it. It just got tossed out, and the story from there, I don't know if simplistic is the right word, but it felt like the story became very simplistic from that point on.
Simplistic with some contrived sort of setups and twists and stuff like that. When I first watched it, I think worked better on me. And when you watch it again, you see, I wouldn't say the amateur type of, or now that I know, again, now it's like when I watched it again, I realized it was J.J. Abrams. I'm like, and it's young J.J. Abrams. It makes more sense of where those kind of holes are. But at the same time, it also makes me a little bit more forgiving. Where if this was a 55, 60-year-old man who wrote it, you might be like a little bit more harsh on them about like those weaknesses, where I feel like I'm in a more forgiving mood because it was a young J.J. Abrams automatically who wrote that. That's where I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I can, that's my bias towards it. Thinking like, hey, you know what? Still pretty darn good for, like you said, 25-year-old guy writing this movie. It explains some of those misgivings of it, but at the same time, it also lets me forgive those misgivings because, dude, you're 25. What the hell was I doing at 25? So, yeah, I agree. That's why I just wanted to hear like some of the reasons, and it's hard to put a thing on exactly what's missing, what makes it not Oscar quality when the story, the idea potentially could have been something. Like when you look at what makes The English Patient an Oscar winning film, what makes other like there's certain stories that aren't but there's a certain depth to them, I guess, or maturity to them that maybe helps with that this one didn't completely have. But yeah, nice film.
So I know that you've said that you're a pretty big J.J. Abrams fan, and you've followed his work and everything else. Do you feel like in this movie, I know one of the things he's famous for is his mystery box style of storytelling. Do you feel like there's a way that's getting worked out in this movie? This is one of the first movies, one of the first screenplays that for a major movie that he was able to get produced and filmed. Do you feel like you can see evidence of that getting worked out in this movie?
Well, I think definitely the whole affair thing. There's the crackers, and then there's the Ritz Carlton, and then there's the and then his affair, and then it was like not only did she have an affair, he had an affair, and like it's like, oh, here comes the next one. Like you think it's just going to be him, and he leaves, and that's where you're kind of left going with it the first time. Like, oh, how dare she cheat on him? But then wait a second, oops, you cheat on her too. A little bit of that where it's like a little bit of the plot twist type of like, oh, next thing you know about this, but now you know about this. Oh, you know about that now, but you didn't really know about. I think there's a little of that in there, maybe getting worked out.
Yeah. And you bring that up, and that was another example I was going to give is the character of Linda. We see her at the beginning. She's in the courtroom with him. She's one of the other attorneys, in his firm. And, we see her at the beginning there. We don't really see her. I feel like we don't really see her again until later on in the movie. They're having lunch that one time, and he's already had his accident. He's already come back. And he's asking them about, we had this court case, and we told them that, there was no evidence of this, but there is, and we did something wrong. And then you see her again later on. And she, mentions that, hey, you were going to leave your wife for me. And that was another thing that was like, whoa, like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? And she, in that conversation they have, that last conversation that they have, I mean, it's a pretty tough conversation. And you can tell that she's really impacted by what happened to him. And that's another spot where I'm like, well, I would have been, I know that this movie is about him reconnecting with his family, but at the same time, I almost think that idea of the mystery box where, ooh, hey, look at this. We've, now all of a sudden, woohoo, he had an affair too. Like, for me, that almost kind of takes away from, well, how is she also dealing with, why didn't we get to see evidence of her struggling with him being in a coma? If she loved him as much as she seems to, why didn't we ever get to see her visit him at the home or even struggle with, I shouldn't go visit him because I'm, helping him cheat on his wife, or any of that stuff. Like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, really liked the movie, but it was stuff like that I was like,
because
I just want more.
Again, I think your answer for that, like my answer would be again, comes back to that maturity where I think somebody older might put that part of the story into it, but a 20-something-year-old, he's banking more on that plot twist that was going to be like, he was cheating later, so he can't reveal that earlier.
Right.
Otherwise, he can't reveal it as that quick. Like, I think he sees it as a witty plot twist that's going to catch people off guard later. Like, look at it's him too.
Yeah.
And I think that if he gives that away earlier with some depth to it and explores that relationship in a different way, he can't use it as not the punchline, but the gotcha moment, later on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a younger writer who wants that surprise more than he wants that explored, is what I would say. But
so, Pat, I'm gonna direct this question at you because I know you're the defender of children when it comes to movies.
I don't know.
That's that's basically the reputation you've gotten on the podcast. Is if kids are ever going to be in trouble, you're gonna
That's the rep.
Yeah.
That's the rep.
So, in terms of this movie, I mean, he's a jerk to his wife, especially to his daughter. I mean that.
How'd you like that apology?
The non-apology apology? Yeah.
I mean, that's like, and I started laughing because that's just totally the like, look, you spilled juice on my piano. Mm-hmm. But that piano's pretty special to me.
First of all, first world problems to begin with. You spilled juice on my piano.
Yeah. And it was like, this whole thing. And then it all wraps up with good talk. Mm-hmm. And she's just sitting there with kind of the, what are you saying? I mean, that scene.
Not only does it end with the good talk kind of a thing, but it ends with the, okay, well, Daddy had a big case today. I won.
I know, it was perfect.
Yeah.
That scene was perfect. I don't know what your question was, but I just jumped right in. Was it like was it the Chris Farley? What'd you think of that scene? What'd you think of that? Yeah.
What'd you think of that? That one scene with that thing and the No, what I was going to ask you was, do you feel like over the course of the rest of the movie, obviously he has the accident, he's shot in the head, and he becomes basically a brand new person. Do you feel like this movie gives him a chance to redeem that scene in any way, or is it just like wiped out? It's like, no, that was a different person.
Well, I don't know. I tend to think of things as like a process, and I'll relate it to my my multitude of failings as a father on a daily basis. Is I always try and tell myself like, okay, yeah, you blew it this time, but you know what? It's a process, and I'm not going to mess my kid up if I learn from my mistake and I make sure we move ahead. You know what I'm saying? And like my kids are getting old enough so that, there's times that, well, we're all quarantining. So, I mean, we're all together, and there's times when we get on and there were a couple times that we'd be on break and it was just kind of one of those rough days, one of those days that it's just like, you know what, let's all find a corner of the house. We're all in the same room. We're all like literally in the same room. Let's all go to that's just what we need right now. And, there was a little bit of we kind of needed to rally, and there was a just with the kids, they're like kind of what is going on? It was like, hey, you know what? Sometimes families go through this, but we have to move on. Like one bad day isn't going to wreck it. Like one mistaken thing is not going to, and that's what made that first part of the movie, and that's why I jumped to that scene right away, is because that wasn't like a one-time thing. That wasn't like a dude, I totally I lost my stuff when you spilled something on the piano, right? And I try and relate it to myself. Like I don't have a piano, but how would I feel if the kids knocked my trumpet over, And it's like, dude, that's my horn. I mean, that's my tool for my connection to a part of me,
Or if they Pee Wee Big Adventured it and kicked your motorcycle over.
Right. Like, let's say they're messing around in the garage and they knock the bike over, and and it's like, okay, I'd probably be a little surly. Okay. But then I got to look back and say, but there's not a pattern of that to where I'm like constantly on them for every little thing, every little nick in the wall, every little hole, every time they spill, all that kind of stuff. That was the scary part of this movie, is what you saw there is you would imagine that is happening every day in that house. So then to go to your question, well, what does that redeem it? I think all of a sudden, you know, okay, he was making withdrawals from the bank of the family, right? When he came back and he was kind of reborn there, now he's starting to put deposits in, right? And I really think, does that redeem who he was before? Well, no, but I think sometimes kids are resilient. And I think, I'm trying to remember, I think the daughter seemed to kind of, no, because Annette Bening's character flipped over pretty well. The daughter was kind of weirded out at first, but then it was suddenly like, this is, wow, okay, so you want to spend time with me. Okay, you want to hear my problems. You are checking in with me. You are, you know, and I think that started to build that relationship up again. Do you know what I'm saying? And so you don't get that part of the, you know, like you said, and I'm not going to question J.J. Abrams, not because I disagree with you guys, but just because I can't hold a candle to his talent. But that's what the other half hour of the movie would have shown, is it would have been cool to see more of that relationship building. But you're led to believe that he's going to get it because he makes that statement, I missed 11 years of my daughter's life. I don't want to miss any more. And so you're led to believe that he's going to make a point to make up for that. Now, is it reality? Like, would a 12-year-old kid just accept that, or still be stung from what happened in the past? You know, I don't know. Within the construct of this movie, yeah, happily ever after, and that's what they were going for. In real life, as we all know, because we all have families, I mean, it's just constant working, right? So I think as long as he would maintain that same thing where he's just living for his family, then I think that would redeem himself. I don't know if did that kind of answer your question? I think it's so. And I just want to say about that piano incident. Do you notice the piano never came up in the movie? I mean, it wasn't like he was some big musician. It wasn't. I mean, it was a status symbol, right? That's all it was just another decoration in the house. You know,
luxury.
What'd you say?
Luxury.
Yeah, it was just, and you touched my stuff.
It would have been different if the piano looked like a turtle.
Yeah.
And I love that where he comes into the house like for the first time and he walks by and he's like, oh, nice table. When he has a completely different outlook on that. Yeah.
Well, and you know, it's like the thing is it's so corrupt. You know what he's saying. Well, there's a lot wrong to it, but the point that he says where you need to learn to respect other people's stuff, and you need to learn that there's places that you know, there is a point to that where, yeah. And like, I got to tell my kids too, like, why are you guys like walking around with food? Like, go sit down at the table. Right. But the part that's missing in the beginning of the movie is you're teaching kids that you can't just get angry and fly off the handle. And if you do get angry and fly off the handle, you got to beg forgiveness, because that's not the way to, you get what I'm saying? You know, I mean, and I'm, like I said, I'm no perfect dad, but it's like every time I'm trying to like, guys, I told you to calm down at the table. We're jumping around, we're messing around, and now milk spilled all over the table and we got to clean it up. I mean, you're teaching your kids respect. Like, someone else is going to clean up after you. So like, that's not like, let's calm it down. Right. Well, there's better ways to do it. Teach them to clean it up. Okay. You made the mess. Like, you need to clean it up. Be humble. Usually I get done telling my kids, like, guys, what, you're messing around, you're spilling things. I turn around, I end up spilling something, you know? So I mean, there was a lot there that was kind of like not shown, but, yeah. So long story short, yes, within what we see in the movie, I think he can redeem himself.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was kind of wondering with this was, does the introduction of the idea that it's amnesia, that he can't remember a lot of his previous life, then when he makes this new life, you know, in the second half of the movie, in the second, 3/4 of the movie, when he makes this new life for himself, is that as meaningful because he can't remember a good portion of his life before. So he's not really, it's almost like at the beginning of the movie, we're set up with this character, and I don't mean to be like ragging on the movie and really giving it a hard time. I'm trying to kind of maybe talk through what I had hoped to see from the movie that would have given it a little bit more depth. But can he, or in a movie like this, can he truly atone for that behavior in the beginning of the movie if he doesn't remember having been that person? What do you guys think? And in a movie similar to this, maybe not even just regarding Henry, but in a movie like this, if you have a character who can't remember the person they were before, when they make this new life in the second half of the movie, are they truly atoning for that behavior? Or is it basically just, well, forget that first 20 minutes and it's a brand new character and enjoy this heartfelt movie?
I mean, it's a good question. Like, does it count because it was taken away from him? It wasn't done on his own through introspection. But at the same time, there is a discovery process that goes on about who he is and who he wants to be. And I think that we get to the quotes, like I like, one of the things that kind of hits home with me is the speech with Bradley, the therapist about the football career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that whole thing of, he knew his life was over at that minute, but it wasn't. He was a therapist, and how he became. So, I mean, I read the whole quote, but you get to kind of find out who you are, who you really are. So was that person before really him? Or was this really him? I think that could be an adequate question as well. Like, was there a reset button on who he really was? Maybe he was a better person when he was younger, and he lost his way and became a really person through power and through all the other things and through environment and through job and through career and putting all those things first. So is this really him going back to the base of who he is and rediscovering that? Or is your question valid? Is this just kind of like he didn't really choose to become a different person, so it doesn't count? I don't know if that's what you're kind of alluding to. Mm-hmm. But he does have a choice now because he knows things. He knows that he was a lawyer. He knows that what is right and wrong, and he knows that he has a choice. So he lost maybe the condition he had or the blinders he had on in the past, and he can still choose that path technically, but it just doesn't feel right for him. And, and he's making choices that were better now. I don't know. So I think there is still an element of choice. So I think it does count, I guess, is my bottom circle around all the way around answer.
Okay.
Because he could still go back and be a nasty lawyer, and he could follow when the guy's saying, "Hey, this is what's paying for our lunch, and this is what's," he can go that route. He could technically. There's nothing stopping him. He makes a choice not to. Finding out that he had the affair, he could, finding out that his wife had the affair, he can go a certain path, and instead he makes the choice not to. So I think that given his situation, it's maybe unfair to sit there and say that it doesn't count because he still is faced with choices, and he's self-aware enough that he does have still a choice between ethical decisions and not unethical, and he's choosing ethical this time. Maybe that's who he really was 20 years before.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and
it's
that's
a thoughtful question. I don't know if it's hard to,
Dennis, I think you're exactly right when you say I don't know, because that was going to be the next thing I said. Is that's the nice thing about it is it's not up, like, it's not for him to judge. Like, it's someone else is going to judge him, right? It's up to, and I mean, we can get discussing like a higher power and all of that will be the judge, or we could keep it, secular and this worldly and say the community will be the judge, right? And that's where I thought the scene where, and obviously we'll put aside the discussion about, a higher power, because that did not come into play in this movie. And, we could easily make this episode 12 hours long. But, as far as like this worldly kind of stuff, when he went to the door and like they recognized him, the one that he got right at the beginning in the court case, and he knocked on the door and it was just like, why are you here? And he's just like, I think he said, I'm seeing things differently now or whatever. And it was pretty, it wasn't like, oh, well, come in, we'll make it okay. And he's like, look, please just take this, give it to your lawyer. And he turns around to walk away. And like at first she looked up and I mean, it was like she got it. She's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, and I can't remember if she said thank you or whatever. But at first, like, I was worried. I thought they were going to make it like she was going to say something, he was going to say something, and she was going to invite him in and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like so glad the way they did it, where he came up and he's like, look, I just want to give this to you because at this point, it's the right thing to do. I can't go back. I can't go back in time. I can't, you know. And like he said, he can't go back in time, whether he remembers that person or whether he doesn't remember that person. But he's, you know, he's a different person now.
Who I am now.
Yeah, this is who I am now.
Go forward.
You got to go forward. And that's what I thought was great about that scene is they weren't like rushing to say, oh, well, all is forgiven and all is this, but they just judged that one thing. Thank you. This is, you know, and that's just how they left it. So, I mean, at that point, it's going to be, it's up to his wife. It's up to his daughter. It's up to his friends, and to judge whether that, you know, is, you know, and eventually, you know, obviously when you go to the great hereafter, it's up, you know, it's up to the you know, the higher power or whatever you believe in that will judge you. And, so it's, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's just kind of like out of his hands. Like, it's out, you know, all I can do is what I can do. And, yeah.
All right. Well, do we have any in terms of the movie? Do we have any like favorite scenes? Dennis, you mentioned you might have a couple of favorite quotes.
I think for me, you know, and again, it's a long quote, but it's just that whole story. And I think that one, when I look back at what I think we always struggle, like, at least when I say we, I'm saying me. I know a friend. Speaking for a friend, no, it's the speech that the guy gave about like, where he's like, I got bad knees. Well, you know, I have one bad knee, but I'll read it really quick. But it's he goes, Bradley goes, I got bad knees. He's like, what? He goes, my knees, they're bad. Ask me why. And he's like, why? And Bradley says, football. Wrecked them both playing college football. Man, it was my life. Football. What else was there? Not jack shit. Homecoming, right? The son of a bitch threw a perfect spiral and I caught it. Boom, right out of the sky. I had the moment. When that safety hit me and I felt my knees pop, I knew it was it. That was it. Game over. Forget it. I was dead. My life was over, Hank. Now ask me if I mind having bad knees. He's like, do you mind? He's like, no way. It was a test. I had to find a life. The therapist that helped me walk again, he was so cool. I thought, that's what I want to do. When I told some of my buddies, they laughed right in my face, called me a nurse, bought me a white dress. But check it out. You're walking, you're talking, you're sitting here drinking some pretty expensive damn beer. I had something to do with that. If it weren't for my knees, I'd never met you. So no, I don't mind having my bad knees. No. Let me tell you something, Hank. Don't listen to nobody trying to tell you who you are. It might take a while, but you'll figure it out yourself. Or figure yourself out. So just that whole interaction, I think that speech was just like interaction was just a really, you know, because baseball was life for me, you know, it really was like, I was going to be a baseball player. I gave up Fridays and Saturdays where other people were out partying and playing around and goofing around and stuff. And I was in the gym and I was working out. It was baseball. And then I had an ankle injury that was pretty severe. And it really, you know, it wasn't like it as immediate as that. I didn't give up for a while, but it was in the back of my mind. It was like, man, I'm not 100% and I'm not the same since I had this injury. It was on my, you know, planting leg. So for me, it's like just a story that still resonates with me now about having a certain dream and not going that way. And then what do you do? And what kind of life do you find? And there was a post-traumatic sort of like stress to that, to a certain degree of like looking back on, well, not doing what I should have been doing, you know, like I should have been playing baseball. And if you live your life that way, where does that get you? So that whole idea of moving forward, about finding a life, about making, you know, those type of things, it definitely was a personal struggle for me that went well into my 30s. And I'm not even going to say in my 30s, I'm going to say even there's remnants of that today. You know, there's little bits and pieces where I go to a baseball game. I couldn't go to a baseball game for years. People are like, why aren't you going to a baseball game? You're a baseball fan. I'm like, no, because it hurt too much to watch it. Because sitting in that stand wasn't where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be out in that mound. I was supposed to be in that field, you know. And it was torture to do that. So the story of that that you have tragedies or things in your life that direct you in a different way and you may not realize it, it's up to us to determine, you know, where we want to go and what we want to do and how to find that life. So to me, that story, and I think that alone was like the kind of the price of admission for the movie for me, with all the other flaws. For me, that just strikes a personal chord. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Well, first of all, Dennis, thank you for sharing that really personal story. Cause please don't take this the wrong way, but when I watched that and I heard him tell that story, I was like, I really hope Dennis is on the podcast tonight because I really want to get his perspective with that story. And that's, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that because that's a very,
it's the way it's written too. It's written almost from that perspective, just the way the guy says it, like, no, that was life. Like that was life. And when this didn't happen, life is over, you know, and you want to have that almost that, you know, and for me, I'm not a person who's like, life is over, but you felt like it, but you would not, you know, in other words, there's no like, you know, I don't tend to have any sort of like suicidal tendencies over that, but that's the torture of it. I still have to live a life now, but my life that was supposed to be isn't there. As a young 20-something person who's looking back at all those Fridays that I didn't go out, all the time I was doing what I was supposed to, it was kind of like, it was a little bit of Field of Dreams, like what's in it for me? Like I've done everything you've asked. Like I've been the good guy who's done this. I haven't been out partying, drinking drugs. I didn't do it. I've worked my butt off. I've trained hard. I've tried to be good, you know, like you put in the work. In this, you know, one stupid mistake of playing a basketball game for a pickup basketball game and that's done and that's it. You're telling me that's over? Like that's how quick it goes. And there's a certain unfairness that you feel like you're stuck, like, you know, so you get a little bit of that pity party thing going. And I think that's what, you know, Henry and it's just a really good little short dialogue that I think probably resonates with more than just me, that there's a lot of people out there that I'm sure that have had those dreams and those things that they want to do. And then life throws a curveball. And then what do you do? You know, I mean, we know that right now there's people dealing with the curveballs right now that we know, you know, you're sitting there planning something else and then this happens. And what do? You know, COVID has done that for people as well, you know, where it's woken some people up to some things. And so this is the scene in this movie where he gets shot, man. Ooh. I still like, you can look up that clip on there. It's the way it's done is so, there's a coldness to it and an immediateness to it. Like that's it, you know, cause he gets shot first there and he's like, well, no, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, boom. And the next shot goes in his head. He tries to watch, you see him start repeating words and it's just like, you just literally see like the erase, but like he's like almost like a videotape and you're just ripping the tape out, you know, it's like he's being erased right there before your eyes, like literally being erased.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that scene was.
I was shocked by that when I was a kid. Like when I first saw that, like what was I probably when I was a kid, about 20 years old. But when I saw that scene and the quickness, where'd that come from? I was not expecting that. And expected it to be in such a graphic way, in a cold way. And it wasn't like his head was blown out, you know, it was just that little hole right there. And it was like, he could still sort of function. He didn't just fall to the ground right away. He turned and starts walking out and then falls into the door. And, you know, and it was just like, you just saw him literally like shutting down.
Yeah.
Like that is the reset button right there, you know? So it's a couple impactful scenes for me, I think, just on a personal level that I think at the time, you know, you look at how old I was and, you know, and it's about when I was seeing that movie. And it was, I think that also has kind of an impact where a life that you had planned, whether or not that was, you know, for him, it was kind of it wasn't the greatest life that he was living. So I didn't relate on that end of it. Like, oh, I'm living a bad life. It was more like, wow, you know, what do you do when things didn't go the way you wanted them to? And, yeah. So, yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I watched the movie Soul, the Disney movie.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Have either of you seen it?
No, not yet. I heard it's good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Am I biased because it's jazz music? Yes. Or as is termed in the movie, black improvisational music. But so I'm biased because it's jazz music. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but they address in the movie on a very deep level, I think, I'm a simpleton, so maybe I'm easily impressed. I don't think so that I'm easily impressed. I am a simpleton. But they address in the movie what is the purpose of life.
Yeah.
And you go through it and they hit on a lot of these things like this is my life's mission. I am supposed to be, whether a ball player, a musician, whatever. And the movie really interrogates that. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. But I encourage you that movie is a completely different kind of movie, but it almost is an extension of the discussion the discussion that we're having, the questions that are being posed, and like with your personal narrative there, Dennis. I think that movie just does a beautiful job of kind of giving you kind of the next piece, and almost in a way, does the movie share DNA with what's happening here? Well, I don't know. They're pretty different movies, but you're seeing the same kind of thing.
I think any of those movies that are, and that's what I've heard, it's a pretty deep movie, and it's anything that's going to cause you to be self-reflective, introspective.
Yeah. And what is the purpose? What is the purpose of life? And kind of an extension of, I expected to be running this race, but now I'm running this race. This is not the race I expected to be running. And again, I'm going to stay out of spoilers, but I see the movie because it presents some further questions for this kind of a discussion.
Yeah, anything that's an examine, what's an examined life, an examined life, what's a life well lived, I think everybody faces that when they look in a mirror at some point. And that's something everybody can relate to. And some people will push that away for a while and don't like to look there. And some people are faced with it more abruptly, but I think everybody gets there at some point.
Yeah.
So, coming back to, I think that with John's original thought about is this does it count? Because he ultimately, what other choice does he have? That's who he is right now, and I think if you're taking the positive approach to that, it's like you said, what do you do going forward?
What are your thoughts on it, John?
In terms of that, is he truly able to make amends for his past life? I think to a certain degree. It does seem like as he goes through the rest of the story, he has moments of memory that are coming back to him. So I think if he completely did not remember any of that previous life before the accident, then I think I would have a hard time believing that he is, that there was actual atonement. Now, that's not his fault. Getting shot in the head and not having any memory, that's not his fault at all. But, just I think in terms of the storytelling, why, if he doesn't have to go through anything to atone for that, why show us such a jerk of a character in the beginning and then, erase it and just say, it doesn't really matter now because he's a completely new person. Like, to me, he was such a jerk in the beginning of the movie, and so, power and money and, all the other people in the world are just his to walk over. Why show that extreme if you're not going to have him atone for it in some way? So I think for the movie and for what it is, I think because he has those moments later on where he does remember certain things, I think you could definitely say that, he realizes that because I think there's even a line in the movie he says to his wife, I think he says something like, I don't like who I was before.
Yeah.
So he knows enough to remember kind of, what his life was like and how he treated people. And he knows enough to be able to go to that family, to go to that wife and give her the document that she can share with her attorney. So I think there is enough there to be able to say that, yes, he knows enough to be able to be making amends for what he was like before. I think it just took a lot of me having to think through it for a while to really kind of pull out those details and say, oh, okay, well, actually, now that I think about it a little bit more, he did do this. He did have that.
And I think, like you said, I think he was getting the memory back. And I think had he not known it and somebody had told him you were a jerk before and he didn't know any better and he was just like, whatever. He was coming back to these, kind of almost confused states of like, wow, wait, this, like he started to remember these things. Yeah. And I think that's why I said it becomes a choice.
Yeah.
Is because he is remembering those things, and he could either follow that path and go back to who he was because he's being faced with these memories and who he was. But as he does, he's in a different perspective where he could be like, well, what a jerk that was to do that. You know, like he was able to judge it differently.
Yeah.
And look outside of himself in a way. The interesting, taglines are interesting too. The taglines for these two that they gave, which is typically basically if you walk in to do a pitch, you're given a tagline and then they'll say, okay, tell me more. The first one was the story of a man who had everything but found something more, which I don't like that tagline because when they say the story of a man who had everything, he was really a jerk who had in many ways nothing. So I'm not really a big fan of that one. The second one was his life was based on power, success, and ruthlessness until a bullet made him think again, which I guess is a little bit more truer to the story.
Yeah.
But the first one, the story of a man who had everything but found something more, I feel like is too wishy, like a weak tagline for that movie. It doesn't fully describe it because he didn't really have everything. He had power, success, and ruthlessness, but is that everything?
Yeah, it's kind of like it would be the more accurate thing. A man who had what some aspects of society would term everything.
Everything. That's why.
And it's too wordy.
It was a little too. But I do like that until a bullet made him think again, because that's really what happened here. It hits a pause button on him, and here's a man who never probably would have been self-reflective, never would have probably looked into himself, and the bullet and the tragedy is what allowed him that pause button to kind of do that. And as he does it, these things are slowly being revealed to him over time, and he's getting more of his memory back and kind of, wow, I did this or this happened, and putting pieces together, and he's confused and he's disappointed and probably feel guilty, and and at the same time just kind of slowly processing things, and that's where I think Harrison Ford's performance is we haven't really talked completely about that, but I think he's really good with some of those facial expressions where just the confusion and saying things and and that with his expression sometimes. And I think he does a pretty good job in there with this, because that there's wheels and they're spinning, and I think that's what I always kept going with. So I feel like that was happening inside his head. So that whole idea of like, is he choosing this, or is this just not fair because he didn't really get to atone for it? But I feel like there's a bunch going on there. I can't imagine there's maybe a flood of memories that are starting to come back or trickling in little drops and then waves, and he's got to sort this all out of who the hell was I, and wow, was I really that? And that's not who I feel like I should be. And there's a rustling going on, in his head every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, and this might sound silly, a couple of the things once he got up out of the hospital, walking again and everything, and he was kind of more almost like it had like aspects of childlike wonder, like walking around and stuff. And when he was in the library, especially, like there were some of his mannerisms. It almost reminded me of the way Will Ferrell played Buddy in Elf. Mm-hmm. It really and there were some that it's like, oh, but like there was one where he does this eye thing where his eyes got weird.
And Big.
Yeah, or Tom Hanks and Big. Yeah,
Tom Hanks and Big, a little elephant. Yep, a little.
Yeah, I just saw some things. I'm like, wow, I'm kind of just the way they played that.
Yeah, just the looks and yeah.
It's funny. Quick story. I was talking to a colleague, not at our school, another place that had been, and I'm gonna keep everything real generic, obviously, or general. And he was at a seminar, right? And he was talking about at the seminar, they brought in on like 4 or 5 consecutive days, these folks that were like at the top of the heap of the career. They were the ones writing the books. They were the ones that are getting their names out there. They were the ones that had all these philosophies on, this everything and all that. They were the names of this particular industry. And it was funny because it wasn't a panel discussion. Each day it was a different speaker talking about, well, what made them successful, what they did. And like I said, one of them wrote a book, one of them had, and there was one person in the class, in the seminar, that always asked the same thing. and and this wasn't for undergrads. I mean, everyone was graduate student or out, had been working and was further education. The same question they always asked of these incredibly successful people in this field was the same. It was, how do you maintain the work-life balance? How do you maintain family, with all this? And they said that the disheartening / scary / sad thing was each person said, "Oh, I don't have a family life. Like, I don't have anything." Like, and it was stuff like sometimes like I hardly know my kids, or I'm kind of. It was just pretty disheartening, and they all didn't hear each other. All these different people that were talking didn't hear each other because they were there on separate days, but each kind of had the same answer. And I think, you don't want to overly generalize and say, oh, if you're successful, you don't have a family life. I mean, no, there's ways to do it. But I think the message is, like anything, like we've been talking in here, you've got to work for it each day and work to make a point to make that happen. Whatever that might be. But I don't know, watching this, that story stood out in my mind of this friend of mine that was relaying that. And he said, yeah, boy, that sure opened his eyes. And he says, you know what? Like, I want to do the best I can at my job and, and all this kind of stuff. But boy, the family comes first. And if for some reason that means that, like, I might have to be a little bit less successful at my job, or maybe I'll just be a nobody. I'm not going to be out there writing books and doing all that. Got to make sure you do the family thing the right way. It was a heck of a story,
Yeah.
Each person, how do you maintain that balance? Oh, I don't have a family, like, positive family. It's just like, oof.
All right. Well, do we have any other thing? I am
Mr. Reed. I believe you are on mute.
I am muted. There we go. Okay. Let's mark that down. My only things I had marked down for this whole episode were 25 minutes in, Dennis is on mute. 51 minutes in, Dennis swears. 57 minutes in, Dennis swears. And now, hour and 16, John's muted. And
no, I didn't swear. Bradley swore.
Well, yes.
I was reading lines.
Right. Yes.
I would never swear.
Of course not. No. Yeah. You tell your kids in class that when they bring up, for this essay, I'd like to use this quote from Pulp Fiction.
There you go. There you go.
Not me.
Right. Hey, did they choose to do the movie project? I'm fine with that.
What does Marcellus Wallace look like? Well, let me tell you what this person said.
They chose to do the movie project and they didn't choose to do the paper. I'm all right with that.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Do we have anything else we want to say before we go to the 3 questions?
I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. It is time for 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
All right, 3 questions. First question, what is your favorite movie featuring a doctor or hospital?
Who's going first here?
I think I can do this one. I think I can do this one pretty quickly. I really enjoy, I like the movie itself as a whole, but I think just the little scenes that do take place in the hospital showing, the character as a doctor. I like the movie What Dreams May Come. And I think there's a scene in that one, when Robin Williams, he's the doctor, and he goes into the waiting room when he's the pediatric doctor. He goes in that waiting room, and there's like a painting on the wall. It's like a mural on the wall of like a statue, almost like a statue, and it's like a naked statue. And this little kid has taken a yellow crayon and is like drawing pee, going down from the statue to the floor. And he just kind of walks up. He's like, I bet he feels a lot better.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, the whole scene, the times where he's playing the doctor in that movie, it's not the main part of the movie, but I don't know. I just like those scenes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, he's a doctor in the movie. So, and then he has the doctor, which is he calls the other guy Doc.
Yep.
Because it's his mentor. Yeah. I didn't think of that one. That one did not cross my mind. No. I had like a lot of other ones cross my mind. I'm like, well, is that technically a doctor or a hospital movie? No.
I mean, I could have gone with Dead Ringers because I know Pat loves that one.
Oh.
Pat, go ahead, because I had trouble narrowing some of these down. But I'll be honest. What I do is I did a hospital one and a doctor one.
Okay.
Even though they would be obviously the same, but one focuses more on the doctor, one kind of focuses more on a hospital setting. So,
I'm gonna go with Master and Commander. I think that the relationship between Captain Aubrey and I'm going to draw a complete blank. Steven? Who's the doctor buddy in Master and Commander? Why am I drawing? Okay, now I'm embarrassed because I've read like 4 or 5 of the books. And yeah, so Master and Commander, you have Captain Aubrey, and then you have his right-hand man.
Yeah, Steven.
Steven, yeah, okay, good. I got it right.
Played by Paul Bettany.
Right. And so in that, there's like Steven is the doctor, basically, that like, patches the crew back together, helps the crew out, whenever there's a thing, and provides some great. There's usually a back and forth, and you see it in the movie, but it's further done in the books to a great extent. Is he's the man of science and kind of the man of reason, and Captain Aubrey is a little bit more of the, kind of firebrand and jump in head first kind of, duty and all that kind of stuff. Almost as if you're looking in Star Trek and you had like Dr. McCoy combined with Kirk and Spock. I mean, it was, and that might be a little bit much, but yeah, I would say Master and Commander because like, his medical skills are always in high demand and high use throughout that movie. And if that is disqualified for some reason, then I'll try and think of another answer. Before you do yours, I just thought of another couple movies that if I was going to go with like hospital, not necessarily the doctor character. Okay. I did think of the hospital scenes, especially where they're fighting in Doctor Strange. Those were kind of fun. The other one, and I feel like I've talked to some people before and they're like, yeah, that's not a good movie. I don't care. I enjoy it. There's the Nicolas Cage movie, Nicolas Cage, Meg Ryan, City of Angels. It's the remake of Wings of Desire. Mm-hmm. And that one, I don't know. I like the scenes in that movie where you can see the angels like waiting around for people or like they're waiting for someone to pass. And yeah.
It's like the first 10 or 15 minutes of that movie where they're showing that happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a little kid, I think, in one, and then there's he walks down the hallway with her, I think, in his hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a pretty good one, yeah. And that's why I said if you're picking like little scenes that have a hospital or doctor in them and the whole movie's not, because then you could throw in, if we're playing by those rules, we could throw in the Joker in Dark Knight, that hospital scene.
See, that's what scared me is that when I asked these questions to my kids, that's what both of them said.
See?
And I was like, why did you guys first of all, Nora, I don't think you've even seen that movie. How do you know what that is? And hers was, yeah, there's that one weird scene where like he goes in and how does he not even know that that's the Joker just because he has a mask on? I mean, it's kind of obvious that that's the Joker. And I said, yeah, he's probably on a lot of medication and didn't notice it. And then of course John was like, no, my favorite scene with the hospital is when the Joker's pushed the button and it won't blow up and then finally it blows up.
All right. That's it. And then you can even go to Halloween because the doctor, isn't that you got that one. All right. So what mine came down to was I went with a doctor movie and I went with Awakenings.
Yeah.
Awakenings was one. And then the hospital one, the one that kind of came to my mind, even though there's just something creepy about this one that always kind of stuck with me in the hospital type of thing. It's not a beautiful, it's Shutter Island.
Oh, okay.
Daisy Shutter Island with the mental hospital.
Yeah.
That whole island, that whole thing was creepy. Now there is one I've seen a few times on that was kind of close in that same vibe of very strange, which was, I had to think of the name of it, but it was Cure for Wellness. So I don't know if you've seen that one recently. It was a few years ago, but it was called A Cure for Wellness. A very strange one, had a same sort of strange vibe to it. But those are the two. I did throw out Patch Adams as a possibility, but it was just a little too, I don't know. I mean, it's a funny movie in many ways. It's not a bad movie, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got a
Doc Hollywood.
Yeah,
I thought Pat was going to go for Doc Hollywood.
I've
Flatliners.
Yeah, I'm going to list 10 hospital movies, John.
Pat, I can do 12.
I bet you I can do 12 and a half. I don't want you to unplug the machine until I list 12 and a half hospital movies. I think for a doctor movie, I've got that down. Hospital movies, I'm struggling. Like, I'm coming up with shows, but I'm not coming up with movies. So other than like there's a scene here and a scene there, but like not like where it's a main part of the, you know.
I mean, you could even like another one that kind of came to my mind. I just don't know if I think of it right away as a doctor movie, though. I guess it is, because The Last King, that was the Idi Amin. Remember the guy who was a Scottish guy who played the doctor in that one. I'd have to look that one up. It's what's his name? James McAvoy. See, then I thought that's another one was. I mean, there was a tough question. I was pulling Jeff Mazuka on this one, I think. Because then there's the one with what you call it? There's M. Night Shyamalan.
Which one?
The sequel to
Split.
Split, yeah. They're in the hospital there. I mean, that was another one that was, you know. So hospital movies kind of popped out, but they're all very strange hospital movies. There's not like a really nice, feel-good hospital movie. The one that you said is actually one I had not thought of, which was The City of Angels.
No.
Because you went like scenes, but I guess they don't center around the whole movie. But yeah.
Jacob's Ladder had the hospital scenes.
Yeah.
It was just good.
All right. Well, question number 2. What's your favorite kind of cracker? Pat, do you want to go first, or do you have like
you had wanted more for this? Yeah, you said you need more.
I'm a cracker guy. I love crackers.
You have like 15 or 20?
What was that?
You have like 15 or 20?
I got like 15 or 20. I love crackers. You know, I mean, I love putting them in soup. I love like making like, you know, plates of veggies and some crackers for dip. I love crackers. The number one ones I like, and I know everyone's going to be like, oh, you got to pick some like crazy exotic, all this kind of stuff. Wheat Thins, love the taste of Wheat Thins. My grandmother used to have Wheat Thins and my family didn't. And so whenever I'd go over to my grandmother's house, I'd always get a little stack of Wheat Thins. And it was always like, where do you get these crackers? Like, I've never had these before. This is amazing. And this was a while ago. This was like a couple of years ago. No, this was like back in the day, you know, when I was a little kid. And so that taste was always Wheat Thins. That was like, ooh, special crackers, you know? And so I'd say Wheat Thins are my like absolute favorite. But hey, I've never met a cracker I don't like. I mean, I like all the ones that are all like got tons
goldfish.
Yeah, I'll munch on goldfish. I mean, it's not my favorite, but yeah, there's times that I'll
most of the time, little kids. When everybody's got kids, like our kids liked them. My wife liked them. It was like and I despise those things. I could not stand them. I could eat those.
I mean, you know, goldfish.
The big carton.
Yeah, I mean, I'd eat goldfish as much as like, you know, saltines. I mean, you eat so many and then you're kind of like, I need some water. And I know I know it looks like you're like saying the saltine thing, you know, like, and like I said, I don't know how far we can bend the cracker thing, but Triscuits or like pita chips. Now that gets into chips, or does that count as crackers? I like the real exotic crackers, like the ones that, you know, if I eat too many, you know, I'll like used to be my mom and now my wife will be like, hey, you know, those aren't like cheap. You got to calm down. I'm like, okay, so is it like eat 3 or 4 an hour? Like what? Like, I like all kinds of dip or all kinds of like spread that you can put on crackers. So I love me some crackers, man.
All right, question 3. He covered all crackers.
There it is.
Oh,
there it is.
You didn't get all of them.
Mine's fast. It's basically the old.
Go for it.
I can sometimes go on an eating binge with, and I mean, not so much anymore, but I used to go on a eating binge with the just regular saltines.
Yeah.
Then the other one was the Triscuits, which you mentioned, the sea salt and black pepper. Sea salt and black pepper Triscuits. Those are my two things. I've never really been a big otherwise cracker fanatic, but those two ones are ones that I can, grab a bag and just keep going with.
Yeah. I'm going to say Triscuits have some like flavors that are like, like they've got an olive oil one that's like, and then they've got one that's like I can't pronounce it. Tzatziki.
Yeah.
Tzatziki. They got tzatziki ones, and it's just like, very, very good. It's so good when it touches your lips.
There's cracked pepper and olive oil. That's another.
The cracked pepper.
The cracked pepper, sea salt and black pepper, or cracked pepper and olive oil was a good one. That was the one I liked too.
Yeah.
Right, we know how Pat feels about Triscuits now. Okay.
There it is.
John, what are yours?
I think I would have said Triscuits would have been one of them, but I think absolute favorite, and I have not had these in a really long time, are the white cheddar Cheez-Its. Those are always good. I do like some white cheddar Cheez-Its.
I'm not a Ritz fan either. People are like all big with Ritz and the cheese.
Yeah.
Ritz, you like Ritz? I didn't ask you.
Ooh.
Ritz are good.
Ritz are good.
What's the matter? What's the matter, Dennis? Did your kid spill juice on the piano?
Yeah.
No, usually he just goes by the closet and eats crackers by the closet, and then instead of taking them somewhere else, so at the bottom of the, at the floor by the door, there's just cracker crumbs all over the place.
I'll tell you.
Or he brings them in his bed. Then you have crackers in your bed. He's done that before. He likes crackers.
I'll tell you, man.
He likes Ritz, apparently.
You know what? I'll tell you what hits the spot. And again, does this get into being chips? But there's Ritz, and they're like super light crisps. They're like crisps crackers, and they're like, especially you get some of the flavors in there. Man, those things. That's like, okay, I'm gonna put it on a plate and then walk away as far away as I can from the kitchen, because I'll just inhale those things in one breath. Done. I just ate 5 bags.
Here it has them labeled as chips, so that does not count.
Oh, okay, so that's a disqualifier. Okay, that's good. That's good.
The other ones were labeled as crackers, but this one, the Ritz Crisp, says creamy onion and sea salt are light chips.
Okay.
Baked, not fried, with a crispy, thin shape and irresistible crunch, especially to people named Pat.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm just telling you, I take it out, I put a few on the plate, and then I walk away.
Yeah, do. Can't bring the bag, man. You bring the bag.
No. You know what I found?
That's why it is genius that they do have, at least in the saltines, they have 4 bags in there.
Yeah.
Because there's a stopper in there. It's like we talked about, social media doesn't have a stopping point, doesn't have a cue to stop where, you get to the end of a chapter in a book. You can kind of say, do I want to continue on or not? I'll stop here and continue with the next chapter next time. With crackers, those bags were the stopping cues. So you finish the bag and it's like, do I want to pop open another bag? But if they have it all in one bag, you're just doomed.
See, you say that there's a stopping cue. Like, I feel like kind of like that guy in X-Men that runs through walls. Okay.
You have to make the conscious choice to open the next bag.
What'd you say?
You have to make the conscious choice to open the next bag.
Yeah. See, that's not how it works. I have to make the conscious.
It's open. It's a never ending,
Yeah. Yeah. See, what I find works is you take some crackers, put them on the plate, and then whatever the flavoring is, the crackers, like put some veggies next to it. And it like chop up peppers or cucumbers and open them up so the inside is there. And then you sprinkle that same flavoring on them. And then you're like, veggies will fill you up. So it's like, okay, good. I'm full. I'm going to leave that alone. Cause otherwise it's just like crunch, 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 crunch. I mean, I can even eat with one hand and open the bag with the other hand. Sometimes I don't even care. Sometimes I will eat through the bag and it's just like crunch, crunch, crunch. And then just keep going. Like,
you do that again, but slowly.
No, that's my problem, man. I go too fast. I go through the bag. Crutch, 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 crutch. Is that what you're talking about?
That was exactly what you were doing. But
I don't remember what I was doing.
Question number 3.
Yeah, we were talking about crackers and food, and I told you I'm doing intermittent fasting. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, it's tomorrow, so you should be able to start eating now.
No, I got like how many hours.
You'll just have to stop at noon.
There you go.
First time once that Zoom meeting ends at whatever time, it's gonna be like bust open the crackers, and then I'll do whatever you were doing.
Was that what I was doing?
Words with one stone right there.
No idea. All right, question number 3. What is your favorite Harrison Ford dramatic role?
First before you guys steal everything, or no?
Yeah, go first.
John, you go first. You've been
see, my problem is the one I have. The more I thought about it, like, no, actually, it still I think is mostly an action movie. My first thought was Fugitive.
I knew you were going to say, and that's an action movie, I would say. But yes,
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it qualifies as an action movie, but then again, not exact. I mean,
right.
I would accept that.
Okay. I looked at it. I went to go look it up on IMDb, and in this order, they list it as action, crime, drama.
Yeah.
So, but that would be mine. If we weren't talking like sci-fi, Indiana Jones, like that kind of adventure action kind of movie, I'd probably have to go with Fugitive.
All right. So, Pat, you want next, or you want me to? What do you want?
Go for it, man.
Rock, paper, scissors?
No, you go for it. You go.
I just hope I'm not stealing yours.
No, like I was asking. I was asking if Blade. I was going to ask if. Well, you go ahead because you might be listening to this. You go ahead.
All right, ready? It's not simple. You guys are going to say Witness.
Okay.
That's the Amish one, isn't it?
What?
That's the Amish one, isn't it?
Yep, the Amish one. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah. Good call. Yeah, Dennis, I was texting John saying, hey, is Blade Runner 2049 technically a drama? As long as it's not the director's cut. What was that?
More sci-fi drama, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, it's sci-fi drama. You know, I mean, there's some gunplay. Well, there was some gunplay in this movie. You know, there was some in Witness. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Witness is a great one. American Graffiti. I love him in American Graffiti. I know it's more of a bit part, but I just like, you know, he's just cruising around in his car on a Friday night looking to drag race the fastest people in town. So that's kind of like, I like Harrison Ford in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good choice. Mosquito Coast was, I mean, there was a few that came up, but yeah.
Yeah, if I couldn't do Fugitive, I was probably going to lean towards Mosquito Coast or one of those.
Oh, you know what? There was that one where he crashed the plane. He was the pilot, and he crashed the plane. What was that? That was 10 days and 10 nights? or
6 days, 7 nights?
Something like that.
Nights, yeah, with what's her name? Yeah.
And Hesh.
And Hesh, yeah.
There were some adventure type survival on a desert island elements to the movie, but I thought, you know, maybe that's more dramatic.
Yeah.
And then because you said drama in the question, correct, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you would have thrown out, like, would you, if we threw a comedy category, sort of slash drama, sleeper one that most of you guys probably didn't see, I would think, is the Frisco Kid.
I haven't seen that one.
You guys ever seen that? You have no idea you guys, any idea who's in that one besides him? Interesting pairing to a certain degree, but
nope.
Gene Wilder.
Oh, really?
Gene Wilder and a very young Harrison Ford. That was a favorite movie of ours. It's pretty funny.
The Frisco Kid?
You got to see I wonder if that's on Netflix or anything. I have not. I looked that thing up before years ago, and I could not find it because I wanted to show that to my kids. And it's called The Frisco Kid. It has
1979.
Yep. Prime Video, maybe. Wait, it's saying watch. Hold on, let me see. Watch trailer. So you have to pay $2.99 for it. Well, I might be gifting you guys $2.99. I don't know if it's on the Netflix. No, I don't know. I wonder if it's on the Plex thing. But that is a sort of a sleeper one. You haven't heard it. Gene Wilder's a Jewish a rabbi, I believe, from what I remember. And it's just, there's a whole thing where he doesn't use guns, and Harrison Ford's kind of like your gunslinger guy, and they're like partnered up in a situation. There's a whole, I got to see that one again. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember that being a family favorite. When I say family favorite, not like a family movie necessarily 100%, but we all liked it and watched it at least. Seen it at least 2 or 3 times as a kid. And it's not a movie that you're going to like find on TV all the time. So us seeing it 2 or 3 times means we sought it out. My dad rented it and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
No,
but that would be another one that, I mean, I'd have to look back at his performance, but I'm just remembering that being a kind of cool, not traditional Harrison Ford movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode regarding Henry. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Pat.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks for doing all the
fun time as always.
Yeah. If anybody wants to find out more about our show, you can head over to 30podcast.com is our website. You can find all of our past episodes there, all 300 and whatever they are. You know what I almost forgot to mention, guys? Last week, here, let me, I'm going to kill the music for a second. Last week, I did not get a chance to mention this, so I'm going to mention it now. It has been, February 9th of 2015, we all gathered together in a Mexican restaurant and tried to record our first episode.
Oh, wow.
So we've been doing this for 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tacos El Norte, wasn't it?
It was Tacos El Norte. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, oh man, that's awesome.
So sent you guys flowers.
So we've been doing this for a while.
That's so cool. Well, guys, when this whole pandemic lifts and everything, I say we go out for a celebratory dinner and then go record an episode in a soundproof, air circulating, socially distant room that won't have plate noise.
Not in a restaurant, unless everyone is wearing their own headset.
Yeah, we should go in
not with one microphone in the middle of the table. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was
wow.
So 6 years we've been doing this.
6 years.
It's a little crazy.
Just a tad.
A little crazy. All right. Well, at 30 Podcast, if you're checking things out on social media, we're pretty much anywhere that we're on social media. We are at 30 Podcast. If you want to leave us a voicemail, head over to our website. There is a spot there, a little voicemail button that you can click and record one for us. Or if you want to use the old-fashioned voicemail love line, it is 872-356-6843. Coming up next, we've got our next episode to finish off Family Month in February is the Addams Family, and we're going to have one of our Patreon co-executive producers, Rob Perry, is going to join us on that one. So we're looking forward to talking with Rob. And then coming up in the next couple months, March is our Girl Power Month. We've got Necessary Roughness, My Girl, Thelma and Louise, Fried Green Tomatoes, and Soap Dish. Our March Patreon episode is Favorite Songs of 1990 and 1991. And then April is California Dreams Month. That is Doc Hollywood, The Hard Way, LA Story, and Career Opportunities. And I do not believe at this point, let me look very, very fast. At this point, we do not have our Patreon episode for April determined yet. So we don't have that topic just yet. But we will announce that as soon as we've got that out. So that's what we got coming up. So again, thank you guys for being here with me.
Thank you, John.
All right. Everyone, be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we'll see you back here next time.